Okay, so I know that I said I'd be back whenever we got a new Armored Core release, but I definitely didn't expect that it would be so soon. Carrying on with their work to preserve mobile gaming history, Gmode has once again released a new port of one of those lost Armored Core games from the past, this time being Armored Core Mobile 2. As the name implies, this was the second Armored Core game developed by FromSoftware for phones back in the mid-2000s, and much like Mobile Mission before it, Mobile 2 was essentially lost to time once those phones became redundant and their digital stores were taken down. But Gmode is back to preserve this lost legacy of the Armored Core franchise, and even though I wasn't a very big fan of Mobile Mission, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't excited to check this one out. More Armored Core is still more Armored Core after all. So much like last time, I've sat down with Mobile 2 and not only finished the game, but reached 100% completion within it to form the best opinion on this one that I possibly could before making the video. So is Armored Core Mobile 2 worth checking out? Well, let's talk about it. But before getting too far into the video, I should let you guys know that this is a continuation of a series where I played every single game in the Armored Core franchise for the first time and reviewed every single one as I went along. You don't have to have seen those videos in order to enjoy this one, but I would definitely recommend going to that playlist and checking out my video on Mobile Mission, as I will be comparing that game to Mobile 2 quite a bit throughout the video. Plus, you might just enjoy them if you're a fan of the Armored Core series. So for those of you that are interested in checking that stuff out first, I'll have a link to the full playlist down in the description below. And of course, for those of you who have been around for a while, welcome back to a first-timer's journey into Armored Core. But with all that out of the way, Armored Core Mobile 2 is a third-person shooter mecha game developed and published by FromSoftware for mobile phones in 2005. Unlike its predecessor Mobile Mission, Mobile 2 actually plays like a proper 3D Armored Core title, and most closely resembles Armored Core 3 or Silent Line from a gameplay standpoint. So rather than feeling like it's an Armored Core game in name alone like its predecessor did, Mobile 2 actually plays and feels like an Armored Core game, which is obviously great. And while the core gameplay might be most similar to Armored Core 3, the game structurally feels most similar to Ninebreaker. You've got a bunch of training exercises to complete that will each award you certain ranks for completing them, and depending on what rank you get, you'll gain access to certain new parts as a reward. Much like Ninebreaker, there is no part shop or currency system in this game, so if you want to earn all parts in the game, you'll need to complete every training exercise with the highest rank possible. Also much like Ninebreaker, the training isn't very exciting and basically just feels like something that you have to check off the list. But unlike that game, the arena is the real meat of Mobile 2, and you spend way more time fighting arena opponents than training, so I'm not too bothered by their inclusion actually. Outside of the training, there's also a classic Armored Core arena. This arena is exactly what you'd expect if you played the other Armored Core games, with players slowly climbing up the ladder by defeating one opponent at a time, with the end goal of reaching the number 1 spot. These arena fights will also reward you with a new part for every opponent you defeat, which is honestly really nice. Ninebreaker did give part rewards for some of its arena opponents, but having one for each and every one of them really helps make that arena climb even more addictive, as it feels like you're being meaningfully rewarded for every single victory. However, the arena unfortunately doesn't feature any sort of bios or descriptions for the enemy pilots, which longtime viewers will already know is a big disappointment for me, as I've always felt that those sorts of things add so much personality and flair to an Armored Core arena. But it does have a map select feature much like what we saw from the earlier console titles, which is definitely a great thing. And thankfully, the core gameplay is pretty solid here. The controls are significantly better than in Mobile Mission, with this new port of the game even natively supporting dual analog controls for controllers, much like the Gen 3.5 games. This makes controlling your AC shockingly smooth here, at least so long as you're a user of the infamous claw grip. While the port does feature dual analog controls, all of the important actions are bound to the face buttons here. So if you want to use your boosters, fire your weapons, or even swap your weapon while looking around, you'll have to deploy the claw. Thankfully, I've been a claw user on most games I've played since childhood just out of sheer habit, because I was probably one of the sweatiest Halo players alive back when the series was in its prime. But since I'm likely talking to a lot of old-gen Armored Core players right now, I'll assume that you guys will be perfectly fine with some slightly awkward controls. The only other issue with them is that flying is a bit awkward here, since you only take flight while sitting perfectly still in this game, which of course means that the classic old-gen technique of bunny hopping to throw off the enemy's tracking just isn't viable here. Not that that's much of an issue though, because Mobile 2 is an incredibly easy game. You won't really need to bunny hop to avoid damage, because enemy AI is just really passive in this game, and even if you're just face tanking every single shot that comes your way, you should still win every arena fight in the game regardless. I personally made zero effort to avoid attacks during my playthrough, and I didn't lose a match or fail a training exercise a single time. Even the top-ranked arena opponents went down without much of a fight at all. But to be fair to the game itself, I think it's worth mentioning that this isn't necessarily due to the game's balancing, but rather the introduction of dual analog controls. The enemies and projectiles are very clearly balanced around the idea that the player would be struggling to pilot their AC using the buttons on their mid-2000s flip phones rather than a modern gaming controller. So having those modern controllers and a mostly intuitive control scheme that makes your piloting smooth and natural entirely breaks the game. Seriously, the arena in Mobile 2 makes Armored Core 6's arena look like a no-damage run of Elden Ring. Now, that being said, the game balance isn't amazing aside from the controls either, with Mobile 2 having some of the most broken weapons and builds that I've ever seen from the franchise, much like Mobile Mission did. It could definitely be argued that things are balanced so heavily in the player's favor in these games, just as an additional way to make up for awkward controls on mobile phones of the time, but it's hard to really determine whether that's the case or not without actually playing it on those phones, which is nearly impossible nowadays. So I'm just going to assume that some of the poor balancing here was just bad to begin with, and the rest of it is due to the new control scheme introduced by the port. One of the strangest things about Mobile 2 though is just how quiet the game is. When you're in the menus, you'll have this awesome music track playing that feels very Armored Core, but then when you actually start up an exercise or arena match, it just sounds like this. And no, that's not edited, there's just actually that little audio in the game. There's no background music during gameplay, no ambience to fill that empty space, or even any sort of sound effects for things like using your boosters. The only sounds in the game are just those of your weapons and the enemy's weapons, or maybe some sounds from pieces of training equipment during some exercises. It's genuinely kind of eerie just how quiet it all is. I would have assumed that this was because of an issue with not having enough audio tracks or something, but Mobile Mission didn't have this issue, so I'm genuinely just not sure. Overall though, I think the gameplay is way more fun here than it was in Mobile Mission, but it's still a bit messy and definitely far from perfect. Another area where Mobile 2 has improved a lot over its predecessor is the AC customization. The customization here is leagues beyond the first mobile games thanks to the expanded part variety and the return to more traditional Armored Core gameplay. Compared to Mobile Mission's total of 37 unique parts, Mobile 2 has expanded its catalog to a grand total of 45 unique parts. This is still way less than even the PS1 Armored Core games, but it does add more variety compared to the previous mobile game, and since Mobile 2 plays like a proper old-gen AC title, those parts all feel significantly more unique to one another than they did in Mobile Mission's top-down shooter style. The game even added the booster category back into things here, only bringing even more of that iconic Armored Core customization to the table here. It's not a night and day difference, but it's definitely a noticeable step up and helps keep the game fresh for a little longer by comparison. Painting your AC has improved quite a bit here as well, with the colorization being significantly better than in Mobile Mission. Now, it's still not great, and there were certainly some times where I just couldn't quite get the exact color that I was going for, but it was so much better than in the prior game where I felt like I could barely do anything that I wanted within that paint system. I actually managed to make a couple color schemes here that I thought looked really good, which is something that I definitely can't say for Mobile Mission. It's still fairly limited, only having options for the base and detail portions of the parts you've selected, but it is a huge step up from FromSoft's prior mobile effort, and you even get to see your paint job better due to the gameplay shift. Plus, that wonky model viewer from the first game is back, with all of its goofy charm intact, so I think it's worth at least a little praise. Overall though, I think Mobile 2 is a solid improvement over its predecessor, but it's still not great. The core gameplay is way better than Mobile Missions, but it's also so broken due to the game's balance and the new control scheme that you hardly have to play the game at all. And while the customization is pretty improved here, it's still very lacking by Armored Core standards, as it has less than a third of the part variety that even the original Armored Core on PS1 had. It also doesn't help that the general structure of the game is based off of Ninebreaker, as myself and many other Armored Core fans consider Ninebreaker to be the weakest out of all of the console entries due to just how boring it is. And just like with Mobile Mission, I finished my 100% playthrough of Mobile 2 in a little under 90 minutes, which just makes me feel like it wasn't really worth the $11 price tag for the port. Although it should be said that I had a lot more fun in that roughly hour-and-a-half playthrough than I did with Mobile Mission, so I'd say if this were priced at something more like $7 or $8, I would think that would be pretty fair. It still doesn't feel super justified in its pricing, but it's definitely a bit better in that regard. At the very least, the port itself is pretty great. And the only real issue that I had with it, at least I'm assuming it's a port issue, is that I often saw enemy ACs rendering through pillars and walls in the environments, which probably isn't supposed to happen. So while it's definitely a big improvement over Mobile Mission, I would say that for me personally, Mobile 2 is unfortunately still a bottom 3 Armored Core title. And at the end of the day, I'm going to give Armored Core Mobile 2 a 4.7. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of another video, even if it was a bit of a shorter one. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did enjoy, feel free to leave a like, a comment, a sub, share it with a friend, just anything to help this one out in the algorithm. It is a video about a really obscure spin-off of an already fairly obscure franchise, so I would really appreciate all the help I can get on this one. And if you really enjoyed the video and you want to help support the channel even further, feel free to check out things like my channel memberships or my Patreon, where you can not only support the channel financially, but also get things like behind the scenes updates, early video access, and more. And as always, a huge thank you to those of you who do contribute through these platforms. It really does help me out a lot, and I can't thank you guys enough. With all that being said though, I'm gonna go get back to work on the next video, which is probably just as weird and oddly interesting as this one was. Thank you guys again for watching. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll hope to see all of you right back here next time. Goodbye for now.